Hello, dear hosts, and welcome back to another episode of the Hosting Journey videos. And in today's video, I have Michelle back, and we're going to talk about long-term, short-term, and mid-term. What are the pros, the cons? How much money do we make? So tune in, stay, listen up. Hi, Michelle. We're back to another episode of our series. So let's talk about, first of all, short-term.
Yeah, so let's just talk through what is long-term, what is short-term, what is mid-term. So Evelyn, you are, or you were up until very recently, a short-term host, which means you rent your apartment for periods of less than 30 days, with the occasional speckling of longer-term guests. What are your thoughts on that? Love it, hate it?
I love the finances part of it. So what happened, and I've done all three of them. So I've done long-term, short-term, and mid-term. In Puerto Rico, we're still doing short-term, and La Casita in Puerto Rico, which I'm considering less than 15 days. I kind of consider short-term because and you and I have a podcast episode about long-term guests, because anything after 15 days, the needs of the guests are different.
And that's, to interrupt you quickly, that's actually very important. So some markets look at 15 days, anything more than 2 weeks, as long-term. So anything more than 2 weeks, they're considered a tenant. New York City is both of our bread and butter. And so in New York City, anything more than 30 days is considered a tenant.
Yes. And in Puerto Rico, it's 90 days. We have to pay sales taxes on our place at 7% for less than 90 days. If somebody's staying for longer than 90 days, then we don't have to pay that tax, sort of like a hotel tax.
And it's the same in Berlin. So in Berlin, I have a few apartments in Berlin, and here it's also anything that's less than 90 days is considered short term, and you have to have a business license for it, and you have to pay VAT, which is a very European thing, and it's a whole thing, and that takes you to VAT takes a huge cut. It's currently 16%. It was 19%. So that's, it's something to consider. So
and what is that fee?
VAT, value added tax. I have to say, I love midterm tenants. And why? You ask me why. I think we've talked about this offline so many times.
Yes, we have. And we have a podcast episode all about long-term guests, which I'll link in the description below so people can listen to that podcast episode because it was very valuable. And yes, I totally understand. There is loveliness when a guest is staying for a longer period of time. But as we have discussed before, there's also some pros and cons like everything else, right? You're not making as much money.
Marginally, you can, if you do it correctly, your operations can be pretty close. I would say we're earning 50% less, but we're netting only 30%. Our loss is only 30% of what we were making before, if that makes any sense. So instead of a 50% cut in earnings, we actually are able to improve our margins a little bit, just because, you don't have to, if a guest can't figure out the TV, you don't have to send someone there that evening. You could say, no problem. Someone will be there in 3 days. So, which is a difference, if you have to staff for 24/7 service, this is a cost. And currently our 24/7 service is for emergencies only. And so if there's a true emergency, a plumbing emergency in the middle of the night, I'm not sending my staff there. I'm sending my plumber there. So I don't have to keep that staff. And the same goes if you're a host. You have to, answer Airbnb's calls any time of day. And you have to answer your guest calls any time of day. So on the income side, do we feel that short-term rental is still a good investment? And this is actually something, as I've been working on your property search, this is something I've been going around and around on, is does Evelyn really want to continue with short-term rentals?
It depends on the market, because like we discussed previously, so I've done all three. The beauty with a long-term tenant is you're more hands-off. You have the income coming in. which right now it's sort of questionable because of the eviction moratorium, and a lot of people have taken that, but a lot of people are still also paying their rent, thankfully.
Right.
The shorter term with travel nurses, when I did travel nurses this summer, and then I also did 30-day rentals with New York this year. And I've done the short term all the way to just a one night rental. Oh my God, those are brutal. Because the turnaround and like so much, the cleaning is not as intense, but you still have to clean. But I do feel that short-term rental financially could be more money. But I think we might need to do a little video doing cost analysis, right? Like financial analysis of all the different terms to just say like, hey, look at your numbers. Because in 2019 numbers, I made 30% more than I've done in previous years. I normally make about $100,000 with just my 2 listings in New York. In 2019, I made $130,000, but I also spent $18,000 on cleaning. So,
which is the cost, and you don't pass that on to your guests.
Well, I pass part of it, but not all of it.
I would say before we wrap up the episode on long-term versus short-term, let's talk about the thing that everybody's afraid of with midterm tenants or long-term tenants, which is freeloaders, people who don't leave. So
has that happened to you?
It is the biggest fear of, I think every new Cityami client is afraid of this, having somebody in the apartment for more than 30 days, they become a tenant, and their first question is, what happens if they don't leave?
Yeah.
We've had it. I've had it a couple of times, and things definitely got crazier as COVID hit. And every single time I've managed to negotiate with them. Have you ever had a squatter situation in any of your units?
No, I haven't, thank God. I have not. I've been very blessed with that. And I've had really even good tenants, like long-term tenants when I had tenants, because I've had tenants here at Eveland, and I actually had tenants in another property when I had an apartment that I rented out. So both of them, but my long-term tenants, I vet really, really well, from background checks to credit checks to everything, because they're here for a while. It's not like just a 30-day or anything like that. But even my 30-day, like when I had travel nurses, because it wasn't going through the platform, it was coming direct payment. I checked their stuff. We had a security deposit.
Their credit.
I didn't check their credit, but I checked because they were coming for a job. But those jobs were getting canceled last minute. And I know this is a category that we're going to be talking about. So I know we just like did 10 minutes of talking about just long-term versus short-term. But, you know, I personally, no squatters, no issues with payments. For the most part, even for my 30-day rentals, I go through Airbnb. And even almost everybody, I'm not, I like a little bit of the protection. And look, something just happened in Puerto Rico where someone contacted me. They wanted to come off platform. They wanted to know the neighborhood. And I told him, oh, we're here. We're in this area. He showed up to the front of the house.
Scary. It's not, that's the thing. It's not in a normal situation. You're renting an apartment. People expect the viewing, but this is not what happens with Airbnb. So it's a little different. It's kind of this gray area and nobody knows what to expect. So,
and he wanted for like 15 days. But I was sort of like, look, I'm okay if we go first some days on platform and then some days off, just for my own peace of mind. Because for me, I will go off platform if you have been to my house before. If you are a recurring guest,
fair enough.
If you have a reputation with me that you're a good guest, that you're not going to trash the place, all of this, right?
Right. Yeah. But you build a rapport with your guests, and I think for those of us, I operate on more of a commercial scale, and so even guests that have been to our properties before, we don't allow them to book off the platform without running a full credit check. So it only becomes worth it. But again, I'm now in the midterm space. So we rent our apartments for, I would say on average 3 months, but a minimum of 30 days and typically a maximum of 6 months at a time. We don't sign on to contracts of longer than 6 months in case we have problems and we would rather they leave. So if a guest says, I would like to book off the platform, I'm going to stay for another 3 months, and Airbnb fees are a little too high, that's fine. They can come through and they do the traditional tenant process. So they have to find us on apartments.com, or one of the other sites that we advertise, and then they send requests through there. And then we run their background check and we take a 1 month security deposit and we do everything. But that's because we aren't in the space with them. We have no core feeling of what they are like as a person. And I'm responsible to the landlords who give us their properties to rent for them. And so for sure, we don't want to say, oh, they seem like a good person, so we let them rent without running their background. So no, we definitely require background checks. So going forward, Evelyn, we're looking for 2 to 4 apartments for you, or houses, homes, properties. Do you want all of them to be short term, or would you like a fifth? Or what are you looking at? What are you thinking for the next years for these properties?
I don't mind having a mix of both. Because, and especially 2020 has been a learning lesson for everybody. And I know there's some markets that are doing amazingly well with short-term rentals, like the cabins, the lake, right, all of that. They just did amazing, right? And while us in the city were destroyed, we're suffering a little bit more. So for me, I wouldn't mind having a mix of both, where it's sort of like I like travel nurses, or corporate housing. And I do also like the income from short-term rentals. So,
right. But it is more, I would say the one thing that we didn't talk about is the stress load. And this is why in the other episode we talked about, it is stressful operating short-term apartments, because a guest damages the place, a guest breaks the table, you need to then, or a guest breaks the bed. And we've had this happen a few times now. Lesson learned, never buy a wooden bed. It should always be stainless steel. But you then have 4 hours to get a new bed into the apartment or repair the old bed. And this is super high stress. Now with the long-term rentals and midterm rentals, we always block a day between. That gives us a full day to clean, a full day to air the space out, a full day to remediate any issues that we may have had, such as smoking or what have you. So for quality of life, it's less money, but for sure, I would say the midterm is a better way to go. But definitely, you're going to see higher margins. You're going to see more money. You're going to see more or less on average twice the money coming in if you are renting short-term rentals. And when you're operating as an independent host, you keep more of that. For us, we operate as a business. And so of course I have to pay people, and I pay people who work the night shift more than I pay people who work the day shift. And so it started to make a little bit more sense to do midterm. But for you, I think as an individual, it does make sense to do to keep doing some of those short-term rentals, as long as you have the energy for it, because it does mean 2 a.m. phone calls.
I don't get those. And probably because I'm so small, right? I am a very small operation. We're only the 3 of us. But look, today we got a 5 a.m. email from one of our guests in Puerto Rico because she's having issues with the water. This has been a constant issue that no matter what we do, we don't seem to be able to resolve.
It happens. So, fine. So to wrap it up, I would say we're going to 50-50 it. So we're going to try to look for 2 short-term properties and 2 midterm properties, or maybe a traditional long-term rental, which is just to define this for everyone. This is typically more than 1 year.
A year or more, yeah.
I would say the most standard out there. So here we go.
Hello, dear host. So now you have an idea between long-term tenants, midterm tenants, and short-term guests. I know I'm calling them different things because they are. Now, what are you doing in your business? Do you have less than 15-day guests? Do you have 30 days or more? Or do you have a traditional long-term tenant? And you're just watching these videos to just find out some more information. Let me know in the comments below. I do comment back. Now, for midterm tenants, when I turned over the house from short term, which for me is like less than 15 days, I went to Travel Nurses. And that's a totally different market, and you have to market differently. So what I did was I created a playbook course. So the Travel Nurse Playbook course, where you get all the information from where to find them, how to market, the contracts, everything that you need to know, because this is the information that I had to find out when I went to Travel Nurses. So I'm going to put a link of the course below. Find out if you like it. And let me know if you want to have other episodes and what kind of episodes that you want. What do you want to talk about? Because we have on our list, we have from like taxes, all the different types of housing, tax considerations, your team. So these are future episodes that I'm going to be doing with Michelle, and then I'm going to be doing some other episodes on my own. So subscribe, comment, like, let me know what you want. And I will see you on another episode of the hosting journey. Remember, a happy host makes for a happy guest.